Well, here we are on this Tuesday night, the 13th of February, a day that will be remembered because it actually snowed today. But we've got all sorts of things going on down the road that we'll be taking a look at, and we'll do a little recap and move ahead tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast because it's such a great show. And it's brought to you by our affiliate Tempest by Weatherflow. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system, and you too can join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link is on the descriptor to this podcast, and if you use the coupon code Winter 2023-24, what will they get, Joe Rayo?
You will get 10% off anything that you purchase from the folks over at Tempest. Again, get the revolutionary new Tempest weather station, quite unlike most other weather stations that you may have seen, and very easily to assemble and put up. How long did it take you to put yours up, Joe?
Oh, 5 minutes.
5 minutes. You've got
Right.
5 minutes, don't you? Go and get a Tempest weather station.
Why not? Oh, the world we live in, correct?
Yeah, we certainly live in a very unusual world, don't we?
Yes, we do. We certainly do. All right. Well, we had some snow after all this time. And of course, things, one of the toughest thing for a weathercast, for a meteorologist to do is forecast snow. And I don't care how good you are, you're going to wind up at some point, you know, on every forecast. It's never going to be 100% perfect. Uh, you know, this one was especially so difficult.
And
And
Noah tried to help the operational forecasters out by scheduling a drop of 10 or 15 radio sons, into the center of the storm for the 0Z run last night, because the way that all the models, the guidance models, were taking this system this way and that way, south, north, it was so confusing. I said last night, Joe, that usually when you're within 72 hours of the event, the accuracy or the confidence grows or gets higher, but not with this thing. This thing, right up until the very last moment, I don't think most forecasters knew exactly what was going to happen and how to forecast it.
do you remember? Because I really do not remember a time where an established trend in the models breaks in the last 24 hours and makes a decided, well, it's bizarre to describe, but when you look at it, when you look at it on maps, and I noticed a few people put up some some gifs on it, uh, how the air all of a sudden the area just started shifting southward, southward, southward again after initially going well to pretty much well to the south, and then it came north, 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 and everybody was kind of centered on the idea that this was going to look like the couple of storms that we had in January, and then suddenly at the in the 24-hour time frame, that was what was so striking to me, was that in the 24-hour, even let's stretch it a little bit, the 30-hour time frame, all of a sudden it started going south, south, south. I don't ever remember, outside of a couple of times where on the run before, models cut amounts in half only to go back to them on the next run. But this one was truly, truly strange. I really honestly don't know what to make of it. Maybe because they added that extra data, picked up on the fact that it was going south, or made it go south. I don't know. It's beyond reasoning to me.
Well, you were not here. You were down in Corpus Christi, Texas, where
The '83 storm. I watched every minute of it down there. Well, when I watched it on the maps. This was 1983. We didn't have. You got the video the next day, so they flew it down to you by plane.
the megalopolitan blizzard, some of you may remember, it hit on a Friday afternoon and evening, carried over into Saturday morning, February 11th and 12th, 1983. And Joe, when you talk about how things abruptly changed, in the days leading up to that storm, everybody was very confident that we were going to see a hard hitting storm. Um, 8 to 10, 12 to 16, maybe even higher than that in terms of snow accumulations. And then on the night before the storm was to hit, 12 hours actually before the storm was to hit, the newest run of the, remember this, Joe, the LFM, the 2
Yeah, I
dot
remember. Yeah.
in retrospect now, I'm trying to remember. Was it the LFM or was it perhaps the
Might
NGM?
have been the
I
NGM
think
by
of the
then. I
NGM.
don't remember.
In any case, all of a sudden, they took the storm track and pushed it well to the south, so far to the south that places like Boston and Albany, which had winter storm watches in effect, took them down. They said, well, here's the latest information that we've got. The storm is taking a more southerly track, so it looks like we're going to miss out on the big snowstorm. And of course, that was only for one singular run. And I know that Albany and Boston, whoever was on duty that night, rue the day now that they did that because the next run of the NGM immediately brought the storm right back up again to the track that everybody was looking at for the previous day's heavy duty snow. And they had to scurry to, put back all the watches and warnings and everything else. So that's the only other case I could think of where we saw a dramatic shift or change in the forecast track. And I certainly the 12Z European run, that was an eye opener. I said, wait a minute, hold on, what's going on here? And that's why also suddenly yesterday, weathercasters here in the tri-state area were suddenly saying in New York, snow accumulations of 6 to 9 or maybe 8 to 10 inches. I mean, and where did that come from all of a sudden? And getting the impression that this was going to be another one of those memorable storms. Well, instead, New York, I think Central Park got 3 inches, and parts of the Bronx, North Bronx got like 5 or 6 inches. Staten Island got maybe a couple of inches. So it was not the big storm that was suddenly being promoted yesterday with the sudden southerly shift of the storm track. But still, I mean, considering that New York only had like 2 inches this year up until now, it was something to write home about, I guess.
Well, now Long Island got 6 to 8. Um, Northern New Jersey got anywhere from north of Route 78. A lot of places got a foot plus. Parts of northeastern Pennsylvania put foot plus. Connecticut got up to a foot plus in some areas too, particularly in Fairfield County, which I saw a lot of double digit numbers there. Um, Up by you, Joe, I thought it was sort of ironic that a lot of the double digit amounts were kind of squared right over the Hudson Valley.
Mayopac, right here in Putnam Valley, Peekskill. I mean, we all had double digit. And the reason why we had double digit is because between 9 and 10 o'clock, we must have had some kind of a major snow band that developed literally right on top of us. I mean, at times I looked out the window and it looked like near blizzard conditions. Up until then, we had light snow and visibilities were generally between 1/2 and 1 mile. And I said, oh, okay, we could deal with this for another couple of more hours. But that one snow band kicked my snow total up from 6 to 10 inches over a span of less than 2 hours. So
Right.
there you go.
Well, I just want to go back and look. You mentioned the European. So this was the zero Z European run, and I want to just focus on Boston because uh, this was an area that looked like they were going to get really hammered with 1 foot plus amounts just about everywhere. So this was the zero Z run from Sunday night, and now we'll go to the 12Z run of the European, since you brought it up, and look at the difference with the near
Look at
double
that.
digit numbers. Now Boston only got two, Poughkeepsie only got an inch, and actually, where the heavy snow band on the European setup wound up being too far south because it had it over Nantucket and Cape Cod and across Long Island and over into southern New Jersey. In reality, it wound up ultimately going further north. But talk about it was, the forecasters up in the areas in Boston were all going for a foot plus, not just around Boston, but in most areas in Massachusetts. And even Albany had, big amounts going, not quite to Albany itself, but uh, certainly north of Dutchess County. And when I've got the Boston, this was the national Boston office in terms of the final snow mounts that they got. I mean, except for a small area in Massachusetts, just north of the border of northeastern Connecticut and northwestern Rhode Island, where they picked up some 7, 8, and 9 inch amounts. The Boston area, like two
Yep.
tenths of an inch of snow. I mean, just totally shut out. And much of Massachusetts uh, got very, very little. And going back onto the New York State side, and you can see this the heavy snowband that's set up across northwestern Rhode Island and interior Connecticut, uh, all the way across it to southwestern Connecticut, with double-digit numbers all over the place. I mean, it's tough enough to have to forecast snow amounts, but then you have to deal with this last-minute shift that wound up happening, and on top of that, you had models vacillating back and forth, and then you had to figure out where a heavy snowband was going to set up the way it is. I mean, it just makes it really impossible to. You can never make a absolutely perfect. You settle to get 80 or 90% of it right, and you're happy with that. This one was just beyond. And I honestly, maybe it was the fact that when the low developed, and I'll bring the surface map up just to go back. Let's just go back to earlier today. The low, which by the way, I'm sorry about that. Let me bring it back again. Uh, the first thing was that the primary low was forecast to go into northern West Virginia, and even over the weekend, one of the models actually had it going into southwest Pennsylvania. The low pretty much straddled the Virginia North Carolina state line overnight. And then the new center popped up off the southern part of the Delmarva Peninsula and went pretty much east northeast. And it passed pretty far south of Cape Cod. It was south and east of 40 and 70. Um, the low did deepen or intensify as it moved out, but ultimately it did wind up taking a track that was a little further south, which brought colder air down. And that was another thing, Joe. Um, the dynamics worked. The models that were correct in indicating strong dynamics. They just maybe weren't exactly correct in terms of how strong from what they were showing during the day yesterday. It turned out to be far more important. What I found interesting too was that a lot of places started off as snow and didn't even have any rain at the onset, even in an atmosphere where it was not that cold.
And the thing is that I had actually anticipated up where I was, well, where I am here in Putnam Valley, that we would get some rain. It was raining up until the time I went to sleep last night, just a stone's throw away to my south and to my west. And I'm saying, okay, we're going to get at least some rain to kick off this thing, and that may slow down the accumulation. But then at about 3:45, I woke up, looked out the window. My deck was already completely covered, and my driveway was starting to get covered as well. And that told me immediately that if there was any rain, it really didn't amount to all that much. And the temperature was about 33, and it finally fell to a low of 30 at the height of the storm when it was coming down hot and heavy. Any thoughts that there might be an initial slowing of the accumulation, at least in my vicinity, never really did work out that way. Although it further to the south, I was watching, Joe, starting at about 6 o'clock this morning, all the New York stations and their snow coverage. And the one thing that all of the traffic reporters, especially, or the reporters who were out on the street, standing out there with the snow falling, they were all saying the same thing in New York. Well, it's coming down to beat the band here, but right now it doesn't look like very much is accumulating. It looks like most of it is melting upon. And I'm saying to myself, well, yeah, that's probably because of the temperatures, which were around 34, 35, and also because there may have been a little rain down in New York just before the change over to snow. And it's funny, I've actually been getting, I've people here in the Hudson Valley, of course, rubbing it in, so to speak, I went 3 to 6 for much of the Hudson Valley, and there were some places that got 10 and 12 inches. But yet, I'm actually getting congratulations from people, even here on the chat board, somebody in Brooklyn saying, "You nailed it, Joe Rayo. We only got 1.5 inches here." And it appears that for places in the immediate New York City area, and maybe for some parts of western Long Island, the snow amounts were in the projected 2 to 3 inch category. But then again, as you pointed out, Joe, in other parts of Nassau and Suffolk County, there was a lot more
Right.
than 3 inches out there.
John Lectum, thank you for hitting super chat and thank you for the offer. I am not on a headset mic. Okay. Believe it or not, I know this is my mic that has the headset that I could talk on. I actually have a microphone here, and I don't understand why my audio is low, because when I replay the show on YouTube, my audio is actually higher than Joe's. So I'm not sure why it's it's sounding low. I know a few of you have mentioned that, and I'm trying to kind of talk. I'm looking at my levels. They're sort of off they're right at the very top without, becoming offensive. So I am beside myself. I have been cursed, Joe, with audio issues here on and off this is like the fourth, microphone that I've gotten, and I don't get it. And I'm on a new computer, so I don't. I checked everything. It works when I tape my own videos without any problem. The audio is very loud. So I don't know what else to tell you. If it's still low, I apologize. But I'm doing the best I can here to try to at least talk near the mic and make sure that I don't pull my head back or anything like that.
Well, you
So,
always have sounded good to me, Joe.
well, thank you. Thank you so much. That's why your contract is renewed on a daily basis. Um,
And
Izzy
by the way,
D's.
Tom Contino, no, Lisa Rayo is not related to Bobby Rayo, who, by the way, Joe showed the door to some weeks ago, and I don't think can ever come back. Is that true, Joe?
I'm sorry. Say that again, Joe. I didn't.
Bobby Rayo, you showed Bobby Rayo the door, and
Oh yeah, no. He's yeah. He's
he
he's
or she
he's
or whoever
he is
that.
no long he is no longer with us.
Yes, Lisa Rayo is indeed a relative. She's my sister, my kid's sister, and also I should point out she is the editor, the children's editor at Simon and Schuster. So if you're ever into children's books and want some good children's books, and are interested in that, she's the person behind that at Simon and Schuster Incorporated Inc. or whatever.
Right. Izzy D sent a picture here. This was a shot from Rockland County. I'm not exactly sure where in Rockland County, but I'm sure most places in Rockland County looked like this. A nice, pretty. Always like shots like this. The lone car there, just sitting there with all the big trees and the heavy wet snow that was on there. So,
Yeah, that was the thing about this storm and about this snow was indeed the consistency. Once again, out there with the snowblower today, Joe, and tough to push into that snow because it definitely was not a 10 to 1. It was more like, well, it seemed at times like it was 6 to 1 or 7 to 1, not so much 8 to 1, but it was a heavy, clingy, wet snow. One of these fine days, we're going to get the good old fashioned snow with the puffy, powdery flakes. But today, it was one of those kind of storms that was very tough to move. Brandon Globachov, Joe, suggesting a new poll like we did last night for Cioffi versus Rayo's forecast. Who has
uh,
the funnier comments and
funnier
insight,
comments.
Contino or Fairchild? That's an awesome poll that will generate a lot of hits, right, Joe and
All
Joe?
right. Well, I'll put it up in a second. There's one other graphic that I want to show you, and this was from the Weather Service office, the Eastern region. Now that's the Boston snow amounts. Let me see if I can. This is this is from the Weather Service in the Eastern region, and these are the cities in the Eastern region of NWS with their snowfalls for the year. And what is standout, and this goes up and down the East Coast, it goes all the way back to Ohio. You know, Ohio's in there, West Virginia is in there, the Carolinas, Virginia, you know, going all the way up to Maine. So Caribou, Maine is number one of total snowfall this season, 55.6 inches so far. Number two is Buffalo at 53.6. Worcester is third at 35.6. Binghamton fourth at 35.0. 34.4 for Rochester, New York. So those are the top five. Okay. What
And it's
is
interesting that every single one of those five is running anywhere from like 15 to 20 inches below normal.
And every single city on this list, in the first column, in the second column, and in the third column, every single one is below normal. All of them. I don't see one above. I don't even see one that's like even close to normal. They're all so far below. Newark, 8 inches so far. The normal to date would be 20.2. Washington, D.C., 7.9, 9.3 is where they're standing at. Is Baltimore on here? A Dulles, 10.6 versus a normal of 13.6. I'm trying to see if Baltimore is on here because they've had a couple of snowfalls and I can't seem to find them. But you know, Baltimore 9.1, 12.8 is the average. Now, granted, some of these are points versus surrounding areas. Of course, surrounding areas could be higher, but every one of these is below average. And another one that Scott Briller sent me was the fact that, and I didn't know this. So congratulations, Joe. You predicted that New York City would get more snow this year than last year, and they have. Okay. So they're up to 5.2 at Central Park, I think, or 5.6, something
5.5.
like that.
I said
5.5.
bottom of the
Okay.
bottom of the second column, 5.5.
Minneapolis, Minnesota. Minneapolis, Minnesota, Joe. Snowfall year to date, 7.2 inches. Season to date, 7.2 for Minneapolis. I mean, that's that's just an example of just how lacking snowfall is this year, not just in the East, but just about everywhere in the U.S., except for maybe some mountaintops in the West. And even those places are far, especially in California, as much as the heavy rain and snow that they've had, uh, the snow comes nothing close to what they had last year in that absolutely, off the wall snow season that they had in California.
Well, I said last year after the paucity of snow that we received, 2.3 inches for the entire winter season at Central Park, and I said always it has been the story that in the year following such a low amount of snow, Central Park has always come roaring back with a much higher, more significant snow amount. Now, so far only 5.5. Yes, that beats the 2.3, but there's still the rest of February and March, which is a really crazy off the wall month some years. So who's to say? Maybe if we do get a big snowfall, and I mean a big snowfall, not the one that was advertised for New York today, and they only got like 3-4 inches. I'm talking about one of the good old fashioned, foot plus. If we get one of those for New York, it might very well come in March.
By the way,
We'll
Louis Arizio, Philly only received 0.6 inches. That was at the airport, by the way. But Greg Carriga, who's not on this, every once in a while he's on the chat board, but he's not on. He messaged me earlier today to let me know because he's about 11 miles to the northeast of the airport, I think he said, or north of the airport. But I know it was 11 miles, and he had every bit of 4 inches. So you really didn't have to go that far north and west of where the Philly airport is to get into some, 3-4 inch amounts. That's how sharp the cutoff was
yeah.
when you went from nothing to, I wouldn't say a significant accumulation, but let's call it a moderate accumulation. All right, so enough of that. That storm's gone, and the watches and
Oh, I
warnings
didn't talk.
map.
Sorry about that. Bobby Livingston on the chat board. I guess you weren't listening. I said we still have the rest of February and March. And March, is a crazy month and could very well turn out to be the month where if we do get a big snowfall, we'll get a big snowfall. But I didn't write off the rest of February. I said we still have the rest of February. Some people they just don't listen, I guess. Well, anyway.
Well, everybody's doing, different things. They're typing on the talking to each other on the chat board, and he may have missed it. So, all right. Watches and warnings tonight. Nice and quiet now in the east. There's a few winter weather advisories off of the southeastern shores of Lake Ontario. Otherwise, it's quiet there. We've got some winter weather advisories in a strip across southern Minnesota into South Dakota. And winter storm watches up in northwestern Wyoming into parts of south central Montana, winter weather advisories in northwestern Montana and into Idaho. And in the Cascades down into the Sierra Nevadas, we have either winter weather advisories or winter storm watches or winter storm warnings that are up as the emphasis now will shift to the West Coast as far as activity is concerned over in the coming days, with some storminess coming in from off the Pacific. The low is now well to the east of Cape Cod and racing away. We've got some colder air behind it. And there's some cloud cover over the Great Lakes that's moving southeastward, but there's not much to it. Just a little the northern upper trough that is swinging eastward, and we still got this subtropical jet though coming out of the Pacific and into the Gulf of Mexico. Mostly high clouds that are streaming across northern Florida, and there's moisture coming into the western part of the United States. And as we check the latest radar, this was from earlier when the back edge around 2 o'clock this afternoon was just leaving eastern Long Island and southeastern New England. And if we give it the quick refresh, the upper trough producing snow showers in upstate New York, and not too much going on in New England. We've got some snow showers up in northwestern PA. Precipitation at the moment in the west, Joe, is on the on the light side. And I think we should just also point out that tonight we're going down into the 20s tonight. Low and mid 20s as you go well inland, mid to upper 20s everywhere else. So obviously, what has fallen and not melted during the day uh, is going to freeze up. So just be extra cautious if you're leaving before sunrise tomorrow morning on your commute, because there probably will be some slick spots. By the way, Bill Bill Corbell put up some pictures from Long Island and a little video, and he just made a point. The, it was kind of like a March snow today, with the temperatures right around 32, and once it stops, within a couple of hours, you lose, or at least a quarter of the accumulation. But it had that. This is kind of how it happens in the middle and latter part of March when it snows.
Yeah, and in fact, the funny thing is that after I had, I had made a measurement here at my house and got 10 inches, then we decided we would. Well, we didn't decide. We knew we had to go out and clear everything away. My wife, myself, my daughter was here to help out as well. So it took a couple of hours to clear away all that snow off the deck and off the driveway and the back patio and everything. And then I grabbed the yardstick again, and Maria said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I want to make a measurement, see what may have any little bit that may have fallen from when I made my last measurement." And it turned out that I actually got many places that I measured in the same area where I measured at noontime actually got less snow. And I said, "My God, it must be the heaviness of the snow compressing down." So I figured I was going to get like 10.2 or 10.5 or something like that. Instead, I'm getting like 9.5, 9.3. So I guess again, I mentioned this yesterday. The compression actually played a role in the snow amounts, the snow accumulations as well.
Oh, definitely, most definitely. It was the water content. I want to see how much. You reminded me. I want to take a look at how much rainfall. What was the liquid precip measurement at LaGuardia? Just to get an idea of what the snow ratio must have been, because I'm going to guess from those 3 to 4 inch snow amounts that were measured in the city probably weighed a lot the water content of those flakes must have been quite a bit.
I would agree. I would agree. And then
Uh,
no, trying to
right.
lift that snow was something else. And the bell rings because we've gone over 100 likes on my counter. It says 105.
And the WPC folks, not showing a whole lot of moisture here in the east over the next 7 days. Does show quite a bit of moisture from Florida and across the Gulf of Mexico back into South Texas, 3/4 of an inch to an inch and a half there. Some isolated areas of a half inch plus around the Great Lakes. We've got a couple of disturbances to talk about. And another round of a series of systems coming into the west, several to many inches of rain from San Diego all the way up the coast to Oregon, and particularly heavy around Los Angeles area. We've got these orange patches are 5 inches plus. The same goes for the area from San Francisco northward, and of course you see the area in the Sierra Nevadas and also in the Cascades. And that's where we're going to probably see some more snows. This is WPC's probabilities for at least two. Some of this came out at 4 o'clock this afternoon. Now, there's a couple of systems moving through. There's one for Thursday night, so you can see some higher probabilities for at least a couple of inches in upstate New York and up into central and northern New England, except for Maine gets cut off there. Also, that strip across the Dakotas into Minnesota, back over into Wyoming and into Idaho, and you can see also in the Cascades and the Sierra Nevada zone, I'll put the probability for at least 12. And this again is over the next 72 hours, but 50% or higher probabilities in the Cascades and the Sierra Nevadas and parts of the mountains in Wyoming. And I don't think there's any need to go swing that to the eastern part of the United States because we don't have much going on. So our low pulls out, Joe, and we've got this sort of a low that comes out of Iowa and then runs to our north across the Great Lakes on Thursday. So we'll probably warm up a little bit ahead of it on Thursday, but tomorrow should be, thinking probably mostly 30s during the day, maybe getting upper 30s to mid 40s on Thursday before this front comes through with maybe a shower. And then we've got a system on Saturday that I think we got to, it looks minor, but I want to keep an eye on this. The low that you see there in northern Arkansas, I'm going to switch over to the upper air. There's a sharp trough, fairly sharp trough in the northern part of the jet stream that's swinging down and around. And it kind of it initially looks sharp, and then it sort of broadens out a little bit as it approaches the northeast on Saturday. So this low ahead of it is going to probably have an area of snow with it that comes out of through Iowa and Illinois along about Thursday into Friday, and then the low sort of moves off the Delaware coast and runs out to the northeast. Doesn't really do very much, but I just want to keep an eye on it in case that trough in the northern jet stream decides that it wants to be a little sharper as it swings around. But I think this is the kind of system that, if the way it's showing up produces maybe a coating to perhaps an inch or two for somebody, and then it goes on its merry way. A rare weak system, which we haven't seen very much of over the last number of years. But this is what they looked like in those years going back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. We used to get a lot of these types of systems where they were sort of on the minor side. But again, I want to keep an eye on it just in case. And there is Gulf moisture, but most of that's going to get shunted to the south and east. And then we go into next week, and at least for now, models don't seem to be doing much of anything. There's something for the middle of next week that probably is another system we may want to keep an eye on. So there's some chances along the way. We'll see what happens when we get to Friday, when we get to Thursday, to look at the system for Friday and into Saturday, whether it's going to just be something minor or maybe evolve into something a bit more than just minor.
Those Clippers, you're absolutely right. We had a number of them in the 70s and into the early 80s. They were fun, actually. Sometimes if they dove far enough to the south of our area, then you had to watch them really carefully because, especially on the old LFM model where we used to plot out what we call PVA, that was kind of like the source for possible energy where if the system passed over the ocean, the warm Gulf Stream, for example, these innocuous little things that dropped out of, let's say, Minnesota and swept past Chicago, you say, yeah, that's not going to amount to a hill of beans. As soon as they got their feet wet out over the ocean, some of that atmospheric energy would suddenly cause the damn thing to blow up, and suddenly you found yourself with a surprise 3 to 6 or 4 to 8 inch snowfall.
Or they just blew up offshore and you were upset because you didn't get anything out of it.
It didn't, yeah, exactly,
There was
exactly.
always that.
And we had a lot.
Um,
We haven't had very many of those.
yeah, but that over the last 20 years, they're really we've got away from that. And I mentioned last night, Bill Goodman has been doing an analysis of the data over the last number of years, and there's been, the number of big storms has been increasing, the number of total storms has been decreasing because the small storms are decreasing. So we get fewer storms, but we get bigger, we get ones that produce a lot more than the smaller ones do.
Right. And Tom Contino, Joe just answered your question. He said,
Yes.
why is that? Why are clippers decreasing?
And
Well,
that I don't know the exact reason why that is. We just, but those are the numbers. Um, Bill will probably inform me when he continues his research to see what he, may come up with his own reason as to why, his conclusions as to why that is the case.
you may remember
Um,
there was one Alberta Clipper back in the late 70s or early 80s, Joe, that did exactly what I just said. I mean, it went offshore and blew up, and unexpectedly, New York got walloped with 5 or 7 inches of snow. And some writer for the Daily News or the New York Post, I guess, had an axe to grind with all of the weathercasters on TV and radio, and did a bit of research and had an article showing all of the predictions of the people, how they forecast that storm. Of course, nobody got it because these things were kind of unexpected. The models didn't handle them very well. But along with the fact that they blew the forecast, they also indicated the salaries of all of these people, including, for example,
nice.
Corbell.
Really, really classy. Very
And
classy reporter.
for Storm Field, who was the son of Frank Field, they referred to Frank Field as Daddy Big Bucks in the article. You don't have anything like that anymore. But that was entertainment back in the 70s and 80s. So
Yeah. There were a couple. There is something I did want to touch on one subject that has struck me over the last couple of days, and that is going into this storm from today. Uh, I got a whole, and you've probably got the same comments, Joe. 3 or 4 days ahead of time. But my app says that it's going to be in the 50s every day next week, so it's not going to snow. Okay. Um, but the temperatures today are in the 40s, so it's not going to snow. Um, the ground, well, obviously the warm ground. Well, that's another one. The warm ground, so the snow is not going to stick. Okay, so right off the bat with the whole stupidity of the warm ground. Okay, intensity trumps the ground. I don't care how warm it is. Today proves what I have been saying all along when it comes to this sort of stuff. Intensity um, trumps the warm ground. It trumps the warm temperatures from the day or two before. Okay. If it snows hard, it's going to stick. And I don't want to, I hate to keep bringing that up because a new group of people that have suddenly discovered the warm ground will come up and bring up the warm ground. And the app thing drives me crazy because of the fact that people don't seem to realize that these apps are run off models. But my 10-day forecast, that was the other one again. Oh,
yeah.
the 10-day forecast is it's going to be in the 50s every single day. Oh, please, just take your 10-day forecast and put it where the sun doesn't shine, for Christ's sake. We'll see how warm it gets, whether it gets to the 50s. But it's just But the thing is, because they sort of throw you these phrases, these things, and they word it in such a way where they're trying to make you feel stupid because they're trying to say like, well, you should be smart enough to know that it's been in the 60s today, so how's it going to snow tomorrow, or something along those lines. And I'm just sort of losing my patience. I try to ignore that stuff. I don't respond to any of it for the most part. Um, and then there was one today that I got, which was a general statement. And this person apparently I don't know where he got this from, Joe, but um, he said that weather forecasting is a scam. That's the phrase he used. I was actually trying to find the comment, um, but I couldn't find it. I wanted to read it the way it was, way he wrote it. But he said that basically weather forecasting is a scam. That the accuracy of snow forecasts uh, has not improved since 1980. So I wonder why he picked 1980. Where did you read this? But he just kept, and then he was quoting. He quoted he quoted Lee Goldberg's forecast over a series of days where the numbers changed every single day, and I just kind of tried to explain the fact that you know what, how is it that somebody, I just I find it amazing that some people seem to be experts at everybody else's job. Okay. You make the usual comment about the fact that there's no repercussions for somebody who does his job and gets it wrong 90% of the time. And I find it amazing how so many there are people out there who are so perfect, Joe. They make no mistakes in their lives. They're so perfect that they know how to do everybody else's job better than you do. And that just ticks me off. It's just, really, everybody's an expert at everything, at everything. I read it on the internet, so therefore it must be true. Anyway, I normally when storms happen, you see more of this stuff, and you know, it just grates on me. So I just kind of I had a vent, and I
Okay,
vented.
and you vented. You know,
Um, do you have, excuse me, do you have Briller Jeopardy?
it's been so long since I checked.
Let me
I may
see if
very
I
well.
have one.
I mean, it may very well be that it was sent to me like a week ago, but we just
Uh,
haven't had a chance
let me
to look at
see.
it. Let me just check and see what I have. If I have anything from Mr. Briller. Um, no, I don't think so. Let's see. This was well. Wait a minute. February 4th, 2024, and this is Tuesday, 10:29 p.m. No, no, there's
Oh,
nothing.
I got one from Saturday, so I do have one.
Okay.
Okay. So I got one on Saturday because I know we didn't do one Sunday. We didn't do one yesterday. We didn't do one Sunday, and we didn't do one yesterday. So we're going to do it tonight. So are you ready, everybody? These are the average high temperatures for the following cities in the month of February. Okay, average high temperatures in the month of February for the following cities. So the first city we have is Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh, well, Joe, you should. Well, you've got the answer, so you already know.
Right, I do have the answer. Atlanta, Georgia.
Atlanta, Georgia. How about we get into the 60s, perhaps, for a high temperature in February? I think I'll say 62.
You'll say 62. Tom Fox said 65. Jason Fox said 52. Christopher Bear said 51. Mr. Reuben Fairchild, the Storm Chaser, said 65. And Bobby Livingsworth said 48. Lou Arizio said 55. However, Maggie P and Vincent Croce hit it tonight, 58. And so did Frank Scalera, and Norm Roberts just missed it by one at 59.
And there you go.
And there we have it. Okay, so the next one we have is Baltimore.
Didn't we do Baltimore? Or was that maybe I'm thinking about the low temperature?
Might have been the low temperature.
Right. So now we're doing high temperature. Well, in New York, I think it's 42. And I would think Baltimore is 4 or 5 degrees higher. So I'm going to say 47.
Oh, you and Vincent Croce at 47 in Snake Country.
Ah,
In Snake Country, but Maggie P and Joe Lopresti get it right at 46.
and Frank Scalera.
And Frank
And
Scalera
Johnson.
and Theodora Johnson at
Yes.
46 and Lou Aricio at 46. Excuse me. Okay, next is Beantown, Boston.
Well, like I said, New York is like 42. Boston is probably 40, 39, 39.
And 39, you can ring the bell.
Oh, yes.
Johnny Sachs
They ring the
also
bell
getting
for
it
me.
at 39. And a number of you are doing 38, 39. So very good. Everybody seems to be in range. Number four is Buffalo.
Buffalo. Buffalo.
Shuffle off.
How about 37?
How about 37? No, that's not right.
No,
Johnny
well,
Sachs is in Snake Country at 32, and Vincent Croce is in Snake Country at 34, which means Brandon Doherty and Bobby Livingsworth at 33, and Northern Grace and Frank R. at 33 is the correct answer. And number five tonight, uh, Chicago.
Chicago, Chicago. I'm not going to sing. Um, what was Buffalo?
Buffalo was 33.
33, and I said 42 for New York. Chicago's kind of like a midway town for the 33, 30. I'll say 30, 38.
Snake Country, 38 is Snake Country. Brandon Doherty in Snake Country. Uh, Maggie P in Snake Country, but Joe Lopresti, Nitro Eaglehawk, and Brandon Grablichoff, all and John Sachs all nailing it at 37. And the bonus tonight would be Caribou, Maine.
Caribou. Now, this is the high temperature now, right?
The average high temperature.
I think we did the low. What possibly could be the high for caribou? Probably in the 20s. I will say, John Melander, you just took the number I was going to use, 26. I'll say 26.
Um, uh, Helese Zim, as she likes to be, as she's known as, Helese Beloy, 26 also. Northern Grace, 28. Frank Scalera, 28. Christopher Alley's in State Country at 25, and so is Joe Lopresti, but Helen Bertona and Christopher Bear. And let's see if anybody else. Brandon Grablishaw getting it, Joe. 24. 24 for
Well,
Caribou. And there you have it.
and there you have it.
So, anything else?
Yes, I'd like to finish with and I posted this on my Facebook page in regard to, and actually, our mutual friend Pete Bergman said, you really didn't do all that badly in the snow map that you had put up in advance of the storm yesterday. You were off, obviously. The northern portions of the viewing region, got a lot more than what had been suggested by moi. But then again, further south, and the funny thing is, no, Pete Bergman was not on CBS 880, Tom, but he was on WOR 710 for a while. He used to fill in for Bill Corbell. But a lot of people raised their snow estimates, because of the southward shift, especially from the European. That's why, some forecast for New York City was like 6 to 9 and 8 to 10 or whatever all of a sudden. I didn't go that way because I figured, well, it's going to be too warm. I thought, a good part of that is going to be wet snow that's going to subside and compress, and there'll also be a bit of rain. But it turned out that the New York forecast was pretty much on target. But anyway, in regard to my forecast yesterday, I posted the weatherman's lament on my Facebook page today, and I'd like to share it with
I
you,
did
Joe,
see that.
and I'll share it now with all of you out there. The weatherman's lament, and it goes like this: Here is life's great December. These, in the main, are our regrets. When we're right, nobody even remembers. But when we're wrong, no one forgets. I
Well,
told Dennis, I told Dennis Cassia this afternoon, Joe, that after that, string of bad numbers on my forecast for snow, I said I feel like Bill Buckner today.
all of us have been down this road. This is not, you know, you know, this won't be the first. This is not the first time. It won't be the last. We do the best we can, and I mean, we do. We want to get it right. I mean, I had a pit in my stomach all day yesterday because I thought I was too high. Um, what I do pride myself in, and I think Joe prides himself in this too, is the fact that, um, and this is another thing people were telling me because every time they check the weather over the course of the day, and I'm not talking about just on apps, but when they're checking their, local TV station, wherever it happens to be, um, there was a different forecast for amounts every couple of hours. It's 3 to 5. No, it's 6 to 9. No, now it's 1 to 3. Now it's back to 6 to 12, and up and down, up and down. I mean, we don't do that here. I do not do that. In fact, on this particular system, I did a very rare thing was that I had my final call, which I did in the morning on Monday, and I decided to change it because I was too aggressive, too far north. I was really concerned about how far north I had it, so I
Right.
changed it. But that was the only, that's very rare for me. I do an early call 72 hours out. I do a final call, 24, usually about 24 hours before. And, we try to be as consistent as we can. But the bottom line is this is I would love to, those the ones that pontificate and tell you, and come at you like vultures. They just wait for you to make a mistake so that because you don't hear from these people, Joe. You don't. The ones that never forget, the ones that point out your error, you never really hear from them. The other the you know the, every day when you're doing a forecast every single day, 365 days a year on holidays, on family days where you're doing things and you try to, you find something to, you try to find a window of time so you do a quick post or whatever it is. Um, but they wait and circle like vultures for you to make the mistake so that they can come at you. I mean, you must have a really sad life if that's what you do, if all you're doing is spending your time waiting for someone to make an error so that you can pounce. But the bottom line is, we all do the best we can. Uh, we're always learning here. You and I have been doing this collectively for almost 100 years, and we're still learning. And we're still learning. I'm sure we're going to remember the next time around about. I completely forgot about the banding. You got to worry about banding. You got to worry about intensity. You got to worry about the wind off the ocean. You got to worry about the wind off the land. You got to worry about a whole bunch of things to put into this equation to come up with a forecast that you already know is probably going to be wrong for 20% of it, or is going to be
And the
off
one
for
thing I
20% of it.
and the one thing I mentioned to you, Joe, yesterday, which we did mention on the show last night, but I'll mention now, we look at the tabular model output statistics data, and on that data, they go through, I think, the next 72 hours, temperatures, dew points, sky cover, and they also forecast possible snow accumulation amounts. And sometimes these predictions, we call them the categorical predictions, really are off the wall. These models sometimes go crazy with even modest storms. They'll say, "Oh, Newark can get 4 inches. Oh, wait a minute, Montgomery could get 8 inches. Stewart Air Force Base 6 inches." And you say stuff. How are they getting these numbers? They're so high. And the thing I mentioned to you, Joe, is that with this storm that just passed, with both the NAM, the North American Model Categorical data, and also the GFS, the snow information, the snow predictions in the categorical range, zero, or at most one
Right,
inch.
right. You
And
had mentioned that to me.
I'm saying to myself, what the heck is going on here? How could they not forecast at least 4 or 6 or even 8 inches with this? And they're going zero. And I keep looking at this and saying to myself, and that was one of the reasons why, by the way, I may have gone a bit lower than so many other forecasts. Guys said something's wrong here. I mean, when I make a forecast, I want to have everything on the same page, or reading or interacting, the numbers interacting with each other from various model guidance. And that was the problem with this yesterday, and I know it's a problem for you, Joe, and other forecasters. Nothing was matching up. Here we
No,
are, the storm is practically upon us, and then you get to the point where you're not even supposed to look at the models anymore. You're supposed to do nowcasting. And I'm saying, how do I nowcast something that I'm not even aware what's going to happen the
I know.
next?
I actually did not. I didn't look at anything after the show last night. I didn't look at any of the zero Z stuff until I got up. The first thing I looked at in the morning was the fact. I think that I said that earlier in the show was that the first thing I did was I looked to see if the Weather Service had gone, had gone to a winter storm warning for Long Island and New York, and that's where this way I know that I was going to be, my forecast was going to be okay. And I saw that they did. So that was the first thing I did. I said, okay, the guidance must have been okay. And then I sort of, I just kind of perused it. The other problem too was with yesterday was the fact that, like you said, there was all this disagreement. So now we have so many models that's when you start looking at all this other stuff that's on there that you never look at. I was looking at all these short range models that they have just to see, and each one was different than the other. And it's like all it did was make me even less sure of, even if the ones that agreed with me, I found myself feeling even less sure that my forecast was going to be was going to be mostly okay. Yeah, we do we do the best we can, and we enjoy the fact that you folks on the chat board are so, and those of you who are watching, are very much into this. And when I speak of some of these other people, I'm certainly not talking about you folks, because you're all very, you're all very kind, and you realize what we what we deal with on a day-to-day basis, and we try to have fun with it. Uh, and at the same time, we also take it seriously. So we learn, we move on, we go on to the next one, and we'll see what torture that brings.
One guy has been really, pestering, not pestering, but being a real pest on my Facebook page and pointing out, Joe Rayo never gets it right. Joe
Block
Rayo,
them,
well, no, I'd like to do that, but I don't want to, only
block
because
Joe, block them on their birthdays.
I wanted to write to the guy back and say it's so nice now that I have my own official troll. Uh, but
Hey, you
anyway,
know what? I I have a my Facebook business page, because Facebook pays bonuses for engagement. And the more people that engage on your posts, the more bonus money you make. And
right,
I just tell the trolls, hey, look, keep posting, because the more you post, the more, and the more, and then I put dollar signs,
right.
right next to it. So there's that. So know, go ahead, troll all you want, say whatever you want. It's
We're going to close.
cha-ching.
We're going to close the show on this final question from Brandon Grablichoff, Joe. He says, "Hey, Joe and Joe, do you think we could work miracles and get Mr. G PIX11 on the show?"
The Joe and Joe Weather Show is brought to you by Tempest by Weatherflow. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system, and you too can join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link is on the description to this podcast. Use the coupon code Winter2324, and what will they get, Joe?
They'll get 10% off. And I want to thank tonight
Well, Wait,
John,
before you thank, I want to just say some a guy on Long Island just hit super chat. Thank you very
right.
much, some guy, because this storm gave you guys fits from an old friend of Mr. Cioffi. Thank you, some guy on Long Island. I'm kind of curious as to who you are, but thank you for hitting super chat.
And
Now,
John Leckman and also Brandon Doherty, along with some guy. Thank you for hitting the tip jar tonight. Most appreciative.
um, yeah. So anyway, just to answer your question, the answer to that question, the day after I pass, you'll,
He also had Lonnie Quinn, and we've had Lonnie on the show before. Janice Hoff might be interesting to try and approach. Um, Nick said I'll have to get the permission, and that was the last I heard from him.
right.
Um, but now maybe if we spread the word that we had Lee Goldberg on, maybe that'll open the door for other um, weather talent to make their appearance on the show. We'll see.
Well, you never know. We're open to most weather talent here on the Joe and Joe Weather Show
Yes,
podcast.
yes.
Right. When hell freezes over twice, you might see the ones that we don't hold the door open for.
It's Dave Fleischer, Joe, some guy on Long
Oh,
Island,
hi, Dave. Thank you. Thank you, Dave. Yes, Dave and I worked together back in the day
and there
at
you go.
News. Yes. All
And
right. Really, thank you,
Craig Allen.
David, very much.
We'll approach Craig Allen too and see if he's busy. Although Craig is probably the busiest and hardest worker on television. Craig works 7 days a week. If he's not on News Radio 880, he's on Channel 2 on weekends. And I don't know how he does it, but he does it. So
And all right, so we'll work on it. And in the meantime, we'll see you everybody tomorrow night at 7:35 p.m. Eastern Time. Night, night.
good night, folks.